This is a News Laundry podcast and you're listening to NL Hafta.
अंग्रेज अपना लगान और न्यूज लॉन्ड्री अपना हफ्ता कभी नहीं छोड़ते. We have been saying this for 366 episodes and this is our 10th year. In fact, when you guys are listening to this on the weekend, 7th of February is 10 years of News Laundry. So we have a whole bunch of stuff planned. First of all, congratulations everybody.
Yay!
Your panel.
Woo.
Thank you.
Anand is the oldest, I think, in this.
I was here when it was launched.
When it was launched, yes.
Oh.
So it's an all News Laundry panel. We haven't called anyone from outside because we thought since it is 10 years of NL, we should maybe vaguely discuss a couple of things. Otherwise, we will have ideas of what we should aim to achieve in the next 10 years. But the panel today consists of in the office, which is kind of under construction and it's a mess. And we can smell the pest control. So hopefully we shouldn't pass out by the end of this. Manisha Pande. Hi, Manisha.
Hello, how are you?
Anand Vardhan. Hi, Anand.
Hello.
Raman Kirpal.
Hi.
And joining us from the phone line in Chennai is Jayashree.
Hi.
Hi, Jayashree. And joining us from Oxford, is Mehraj.
Hello, everybody.
You have been missed, Mehraj. Many emails come asking why Mehraj can't join us. I'm like, he's busy with Oxford studies, but I know the reality.
Mehraj, I sent half those emails, just so you know. Oh, yeah, of course.
It must be ending in another 2 months, I think.
Yes, sir. 2 more months to
2
go, yeah.
months to
So you'll be back in Delhi to enjoy the summer.
Oh, well, now that you say it, I might change my mind.
Yeah. How's it been to stay out of, the regular news kind
News
of
cycles.
news cycle? Although
I think
I'm
all
sure
of
you're
us-
still consuming a lot of news, knowing you, but still.
Yeah, but all of us should do this. I mean, if you have been working for like 9-10 years without a break, this really, not just because, you get exhausted physically and mentally, it's also, it gives you time to think about things beyond like the daily news grind. Just about our own profession, about our industry and other things in the world. But it gives you that time. And especially if you're in a place like this, where there's this kind of an educational atmosphere, you get to learn a lot, learn from other people and think about things more deeply than you would otherwise.
And how are the other journalists with you? Like, what's the class like?
Oh man, it's an amazing bunch from places where I wouldn't ordinarily have like imagined I would meet people from like Ghana and Guatemala, Indonesia, Finland. And these are people who have been like working for like 20-25 years, been doing amazing things right now, doing amazing things, working out different models of how to take the industry forward and what's waiting us 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the line. So it's really been quite an experience.
So something tells me that the best ideas for the next 10 years are going to come from you. Today you have overpromised.
Yeah, you've had enough time to think.
I hope so. Yeah, why not?
I feel the idea for the next 10 years is we all go for Reuters fellowships. Done.
Everyone goes for Reuters fellowships. Okay, so just see अगर वहाँ जुगाड़ हो सकता है जाने से पहले बोलो भाई thank you for my 6 months. I'm sending some friends उनके लिए जरा seat reserved रख ले लेना. So our listeners, we will be launching a bunch of videos this week, over the next 2 weeks actually, celebrating our 10 years and telling you about 10 years what News Laundry has achieved. And importantly, we will also be conducting an auction. Let me just tell you a little bit about it before we get into the discussion. We have got 2 artworks created by Anish. You know Anish, he was, our very own, who was in Delhi for the longest time. He's created much of the art that you see on News Laundry and the very adorable Birubal and Birbal characters, the new versions of theirs.
He used to head the design team.
Here at News Laundry. And the other by Manjul, who is a very well-known cartoonist. Many of you have seen his work. So they're creating 2 artworks. They'll be fairly large. I think they'll be maybe 24 inches by 12 inches. They are largish pieces. And there will just be 2 of those that will be created, 2 of each. One of each will be here in office and one of each is going to be auctioned with, everyone's signature with the original size. There'll be a postcard size 5 or 9 additional ones which will be also given, but those will be much smaller and they will not have signatures of the entire team. We hope the 2 big ones will be collector's items because there will be no other. We will also be destroying the digital version of that, and maybe in 50 years, 80 years, 90 years time they'll be very valuable, and if not valuable, at least they'll be a collector's item, we hope. So if you want to take part in that auction, stay tuned. You'll get more information on this on our social media. If you're a subscriber, you will get in your inbox the process of how to participate in this auction. And there's also a good time for many of you who often request me that, how can you contribute more than just the NL Sena, because we have a cap on how much you can actually contribute with. And that cap we have because We don't want too much coming from any one source. This is, once in a 10-year kind of event where you can actually contribute way more by, bidding for these two collector's items. And because they're going to be created by Anish and Manjul, you can be rest assured they're going to be phenomenal. I've already seen the rough sketch and I'm really excited about those. So NL at 10 has that one event. There'll be more that you will be hearing about from time to time. But before I get into any other announcements, let's get the headlines and go straight into the discussion.
Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman presented the fourth budget speech on February 1st. She also started off by expressing empathy for those who died during the COVID pandemic. However, the Samyukt Kisan Morcha has called the budget anti-farmer and says farmers will have to prepare for a massive struggle to get MSP. The children's share in the budget, which is spending on things like children's nutrition and healthcare, is also the lowest in 11 years. Rahul Gandhi then attacked the centre in the Lok Sabha, saying there are two Indias, one for the rich, another for the poor.
That's always been the case, though, no?
Yeah, it's always been the case. But I think basically Rahul Gandhi for the first time made such a eloquent speech. So it's become a bit of a celebration. But yeah, we can discuss some issues of that.
In Mumbai, a court has issued summons to Mamata Banerjee for allegedly disrespecting the national anthem. I think she walked out before the anthem had ended and she was sitting for a little bit when the first few stanzas were being sung or something like that.
I see.
In other news, the Trinamool Congress will contest in UP in the 2024 Lok Sabha poll, Mamata has announced.
And they'll support Akhilesh.
Yes.
They'll support Akhilesh Yadav in this election. The Association for Democratic Reforms has said that all parties in Uttar Pradesh have fielded candidates with criminal history. This is not very surprising. In Goa, the AAP has made its candidates sign affidavits vowing not to defect or indulge in corruption.
Congress also did it a while ago. They took all their MLAs to masjid, mandir and church and said, shapat khao bhagwan ki tum nahi chodoge.
You were not
Party. But they didn't say कि हम दूसरों की नहीं तोड़ेंगे. They only said हम खुद नहीं गए. The shapat was just limited to themselves.
Goa mein the election starts after the
polling, counting.
After the result.
In Manipur, the BJP's candidate list triggered violent protests because apparently it featured a lot of turncoats, people who had recently moved to the party.
That's crazy, no? This would have been like primetime news, yeah? If it was Congress workers going
Yeah, they
on a
vandalized
rampage.
the office and all. So, a New Delhi-based think tank has released a list of attacks on journalists in 2021. Topping the list were Jammu and Kashmir, Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, and Tripura. In Mumbai, COVID restrictions have eased. Beaches and stuff will soon reopen.
In fact, COVID restrictions have been removed altogether in Sweden, Norway, South Africa, Finland, Switzerland, United Kingdom, and Denmark.
But also the vaccination rates will be much higher.
Yeah, way higher.
Delhi still has gyms shut. I'm just still upset about that.
Right.
A New York Times report has revealed that India bought the Pegasus spyware from Israel in 2017 as part of a $2 billion defense package. The Union Minister V.K. Singh called NYT Supari Media over its report.
Yes.
Do you know what that means, Jayashree? Supari media?
Like cunning, turncoat?
No.
Am I
Supari.
vaguely correct?
Not even close.
No.
Supari is the slang used that if you want to carry out a hit, supari nikali hai. Suppose Manisha pe supari nikali hai.
Wow.
Then
Okay, I would never have guessed that.
I've put out a contract
To kill me, basically.
So basically, supari is when you pay and you get shit done.
Wonder where it came from, though.
From the pan.
I know, but why is it used for killing someone?
Because you don't want to look out tuna.
Wow. Okay.
What is tuna?
Tuna is also a feature of pan. And if you lagao tuna to someone, it means like you're trying to fool them.
So now that you have all the Panwadi talk worked out, we can continue with the headlines.
Okay, go ahead.
The centre has suspended the telecast of a Malayalam news channel, Media One, due to purported security reasons. However, the Kerala High Court has deferred the order, saying it shouldn't be blocked until the hearing is over.
And in fact, they weren't informed specifically why their license was being withdrawn. And this channel was one of the channels that beams in the south, which was very critical of the government, especially during the riots year before last.
Yeah, and I think during the hearing yesterday, the Kerala High Court asked the centre what are the reasons given? And they said, we'll give it in a sealed cover, which basically means you'll never find out. So the centre has told the Delhi High Court that the criminalisation of marital rape could open the floodgates of false cases. According to reports, Mizoram is planning to give identity cards to nearly 16,000 Myanmar refugees.
And those identity cards will give them what? Do we know what is the benefit of that ID card? It's just a legitimacy.
Maybe rations or stuff like that.
Yeah, okay.
So benefits of like in refugee camps.
Okay.
KCR has called for a new opposition alliance for Lok Sabha 2024 and the need for a new constitution, but this has been slammed by both the BJP and the Congress.
But he said, we need a new constitution.
Yeah, I think it's basically a jostling for more federalism, because even Mamata Banerjee, coincidentally, just one day before that said that, backed SP and was kind of writing off the Congress. So, yeah.
Yeah, so he said that basically, I think many governments at the center have taken away powers from the state. So he said we should all the leaders should get together and discuss and rewrite the constitution. Therefore delegating sort of more power to the state. In the sexual assault case, Kerala High Court has ordered actor Dilip to submit his mobile phone. This is in connection with him apparently threatening to kill one of the police officers investigating the case. In the case of a student who died by suicide in Tamil Nadu, the Madras High Court has said a conversion angle is not improbable, and the case has been transferred to the CBI for inquiry.
Right.
In Karnataka, hijab row has erupted in further colleges after the entire thing in Udupi, where Muslim students were asked to remove their hijab.
Now it's spread to Mangalore also, right? It started off in Udupi.
Yeah. Also, I think in Kerala, there's one thing about one of those sort of NSS, NCC sort of groups. An 8th standard girl has been asked to remove her hijab. So she's now petitioned the High Court saying that she shouldn't be forced to do it.
Right.
The Supreme Court on Friday set aside the Maharashtra Assembly's resolution to suspend 12 MLAs for alleged unruly behavior.
So I'm wondering if this immediately will also kind of have an implication on the MPs who were suspended from the Lok Sabha. No, from the Rajya Sabha. Sorry, they were suspended from Rajya Sabha.
Yeah, Rajya Sabha.
Because then even that was extended beyond sessions, and the logic the Kerala High Court has, not the Kerala High Court, right? It's the Maharashtra High Court. So the Maharashtra High Court has said that you cannot suspend beyond sessions. So that same thing should apply to the MPs, I'm guessing. Right.
The Chinese soldier who was involved in the Galvan Valley clash is now a torchbearer at the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics.
Right.
This is also a really crazy story.
And yeah, that's the headlines for the week.
Okay, but this last story, you're saying that's a crazy story, Manisha. Why specifically?
This is the clash that happened in India.
Yeah. In a related story, there is a newspaper in Australia called the Klaxon, and it has cited the findings by unnamed researchers and said that China had 38 casualties. I'll just see the exact number. Whereas China had only claimed 8 or 9, if I'm not wrong, in that the Galvan Valley clash.
No, they said 42.
They had said none, actually. They never came out with any figures.
But they did say that there were some casualties.
No,
None.
they always denied. There was some rumors in the Chinese internet sphere.
But later they admitted
that
there was some casualties.
But now they're saying 40, they're saying.
They said 42. Huh? I think initially they had said 4.
Okay, so now they're saying 40 is what this newspaper in Australia has claimed. And this is being cited by many people from the government side. But I did hear one spokesperson of the government saying last night on prime time that just because something appears in some newspaper doesn't mean it's the truth. And he was referring to the New York Times coverage of the Pegasus. But in this far lesser known newspaper, they're quoting. So those are the headlines. I have one more quick announcement. As you have been following our election coverage, I hope you have, because we've done some pretty good stuff. In fact, Manisha, Atul and Meghnad's show that they've started, just another election show, I think is what it's called. Another election show has been pretty good. Akanksha and Shivangi will be going to Eastern UP. Ayush and Ashwini will be covering Punjab. Basant is already in UP. You've seen some of his reports already.
Very good videos.
Yeah. Nidhi and Prateek, along with Aditya, have left for Goa yesterday. And
Prateek is living on 5th. Nidhi and Aditya
are already there. Manisha is here in Delhi right now, but tomorrow she, Meghnad, Atul and Parikshit, day after you're leaving for Dehradun. In fact, right now it's the 3rd of February, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah. So you see all these 15 odd people traveling would require money. Of course, they travel with fully paid tickets and stuff like that. So we've set up an NL Sena, which is a 23,21,200 fund. While we're recording this, 16,80,000 have been collected. Thank you so much for your generous contributions. Could you please top this up so all our colleagues have the resources and liquidity that are required to buy food, accommodation, travel, etc., to bring you election coverage that is not funded by any Sarkari ads or any advertising, because we don't take ads. So we'd be very grateful if you go to newslaundry.com, click on the Sena button and contribute to the project. You can also go directly because the link to the Sena is in the show notes below. So please consider contributing to this and also consider participating, if you'd like, in the auction that we'll have on the 13th, which is I think the weekend, to celebrate 10 years. And we've specially commissioned 10-year artwork, which will be just one of a kind. The details will be there in your inbox if you're interested. And if you're a subscriber, you will be getting all the information about this. Now, on that note, I'd just like to start off with Rahul Gandhi's speech. So this is what he sounded like.
I think there are three fundamental things that were not spoken about in the presidential address. The first, and what I consider to be the most important, is the idea that there are now two Indias. There is now no longer one India. There are two Indias. One India is for the extremely rich people. For my friends in the government, I want to make it clear that the spirit of what I'm saying is not one of criticism. The spirit with which I speak is one of discomfort with the state of our country. And the spirit with which I speak is one where I am worried about what is happening to the country.
Also, in case you hear aircrafts pass and stuff, because our studio is under construction, we are recording from a makeshift room. So the audio disturbance from outside traffic will be there a little bit. So this was the most coherent and I think articulate Rahul Gandhi has been. He said some stuff that's very obvious, but why has it become such big news? Is it because Rahul Gandhi still matters? Is it because the BJP and the channels made such a big deal saying, oh, it doesn't matter what he says, that they had this last night, they had a full thing about, look at what he said, that we are not a nation. We are a union
of states.
Now,
Yeah.
had they not made it an event, because yesterday I saw it was on prime time on 3 channels, whereas it's not such a big deal. And I'm not sure it would have been such a talking point had it not been pushed back upon so much.
And it's on the front pages also. I was surprised.
And the way the BJP rushed to sort of counter it
so-
and say, oh, he's wrong on this. And today you have ANI going to former external minister and he's saying that no, India and China and Pakistan were always great friends because of Indira Gandhi, it happened.
Yeah, which is
So
actually,
there's a
again,
lot of-
I think that's another aspect, that defense of Modi is so important that, I don't think the foreign minister should have wandered into this at all. He need not have made a public statement
Yeah,
whether Pakistan and China are united or are not united. So I just think that the whole priority to discredit Rahul Gandhi, they clearly consider him a big threat, because I don't see them doing this to anybody else.
No, it's not a question of, whether the facts are true or whether it was factual or not. I think he was, for the first time, he was very coherent and very articulate. And he played the rhetorics very well. Like he picked up the right, like bringing China and Pakistan together. This is one thing which immediately, goes into your head. We are not a nation, but we are a,
Union of states.
So that also goes down very well. So rich country, poor country, though always.
Two countries. That though, of course, I think
Everybody plays.
UPA saying that, because in fact, in the budget, basically he was commenting on the budget.
Yes.
They have said that they're going to tweak some of the SEZ laws. The whole SEZ policy was a brainchild of Manmohan Singh and Chidambaram, which
Yes.
in my view was one of the biggest disasters. So, but yeah, I just find it interesting that the rush to discredit him has made the speech a bigger event than it was. And by the way, we aren't discussing the budget because you've seen it discussed everywhere. It's our 10-year. You can see a lot of other panel discussions on it. We will not be discussing the budget in detail unless someone has something to say. Anand, your view on the speech, and do you think it would have become such a big talking point even if it hadn't been pushed back upon the way it was?
For all its parliamentary numbers, the Congress still managed 10 crore votes in Lok Sabha elections. So it's still the principal opposition party. Also for BJP, it is the only party with organizational muscle, if it puts its mind to it, to match BJP still. So irrespective of the numerical strength it has in the parliament, it would be taken as a threat. And of course, the party president is Mrs. Gandhi, but of course, Rahul Gandhi is the heir apparent. So he would be targeted. I'm not talking about media. I'm talking about that the BJP as an organizational machinery would target him. That is not a surprise. Second, his point about that has been splashed is about India not being nation or union of states. And in a different perspective, I think he would say that India is a nation. I think context is here important, because in what context he said, because Congress would not like to be seen being saying that India is not a nation.
We just need to put a little rider on that. I think I heard most of the speech. I don't know if I missed any. I think I heard all of it. He at no point said India is not a nation. He said India is a union of states and it's not a kingdom. It's not a Rajya. So all the, even Jay Panda and many of the other BJP spokesmen saying, how dare he say India is not a nation? He has not actually said that, to the best of my knowledge. And I think I've heard the whole speech. So
he didn't. He very specifically said India is described as a union of states. He
and
didn't.
What he said is it is not. He said it's not a kingdom. Ki ek raja ka wo chalega. So this thing that all these ministers even are saying, I think tells us a lot about how disinformation is a tactic. It's a tool.
Yes. So that's an old debate that what he cited was Article 1 of the Constitution, that which Part 1, Article 1 Constitution says India, that is Bharat, is a union of states. So this is the actual wording. And from this, there is a school of political thought in India which premises constitutional patriotism. That is, Habermas's idea of constitutional patriotism is basically derived from the written constitution and the values it inside. But there is another parallel school which even Congress would not be seeing as not being subscribing to it, is that India is a nation in making, a territorial state with a lot of diversities, but which where nation building is a continuous project. Of course, it also, there is a third argument also, that it's a civilizational state. Certain civilizational values over thousands of years have contributed and within a territory, and it's some kind of glue, there's some kind of unifying factor which transcends certain geographical barriers or cultural barriers. So that is a wholly abstract kind of arguments. But I think in the context of what Mr. Gandhi said, he was pushing for federalism and more rights to federal bonhomie, of a kind of federal fraternity among states to guard against the muscle of an authoritarian center. And this is not a new subject, cooperative federalism, or even more. In 1960s, southern states pushed for it. And by 1983, and you had Sarkaria Commission, which was basically recommending on better center-state relations. And it recommended a lot of measures where a state's power could be strengthened over the center. And the immediate context was that the Congress government had been sacking a lot of state governments using Article 356. So this is what I think the BJP extracted political mileage from what the statement could be interpreted or misinterpreted as. I think it was in a context, he said nothing new. And the misinterpretation of it is what Congress would also avoid, yes.
But just add one more thing before we get Jayashree and Mehraj's views on this. The BJP has, in some significant moves, does appear to want to strengthen the center at the cost of states. Whether it is, if you could just briefly, as quickly as possible, this new contentious point of the IS officers, the bureaucrats' appointments, which the state will have less say over its own appointments and the center will have more. The Delhi, in any case, chief minister cannot even decide who will be appointed his own, principal secretary. What is that? How was it? And what is the new formula that BJP wants, which also is being said is anti-federal and will take away the rights from the states to appoint their own officers?
Article 312 of Indian Constitution formed All India Services, IAS, IPS, and Indian Forest Service. Now, these officers are appointed by the center, but they serve particular state cadres. Now, center is, say, empowered to call back these officers for central duties on deputation, 2-3 years in government ministries and this. But in 1952, All India Services rules. So a formula was worked out how it would be done. And since then, the coordination between states and centers has been good. But now the sticking point is that the center is saying that it is 20% or something more sort of the officers it requires. And so the state should relieve them as soon as possible. Now, All India Service itself is a major sticking point in the federal scheme in India. And India has been designed as a constitutional system with a strong center. Many constitutional experts say it is quasi-federal and it is a scheme with a strong central tendency. So it was also because of historical reasons, because we needed a strong
it didn't seem India would stay together at the time.
Yes.
Right. So, Jayashree, what did you make of the speech? Clearly, you also have heard the whole thing. Did you think he made some very valid points? And was that bit where he spoke about his great-grandfather, his grandfather, his grandmother,
blown to bits.
his father, was that a good move or a bad move?
So I think the measure of the speech right now is not on the content on the facts that he made, but on how angry it seems to have made the BJP, because he clearly touched a nerve. So as a speech, it was fine. I mean, he sort of went over the same talking points that we've heard in isolation, like over years. But I do think the response that it's generated has made the speech into a lot more. I mean, you have Amit Malviya, just to be petty, shouting on Twitter about how India is not a union of states. I mean, this is absurd. These are stupid defenses. You have the US State Department spokesperson telling reporters that he doesn't endorse what Rahul Gandhi said, because everything has been blown up to the proportion of Rahul Gandhi is being so anti-national that he's saying these things. The fact that a US State Department is commenting on a speech that an opposition leader made in parliament is ridiculous. But I do think, he was very smart about the way he did it. The fact that he enforced that, yes, he is a nationalist, but he emphasized on how states are being deprived or whatever. Then he talked about his great-grandfather. These are very clever talking points. I don't think it was a great speech, but I do think that put together and put with the response of the kind of responses generated, it worked very well to his advantage.
It has.
He told story of a king with a stick, with a very good narrative, which goes down well with people, and he touched that chord.
The storytelling, the Raja.
Storytelling.
He mentioned the number of times his grandmother was shot.
So it's a king with a stick and the narrative around it. Beautifully told.
What about his grandmother? What was that?
He said she was shot 32 times. My father was blown to pieces.
This is the kind of detail that is very...
Yes.
My grandfather spent 15 years in prison.
These are good headlines.
They gave their lives to make India federal states. So, I think the one thing that would work, and it would be very hard for the BJP to push back, would be that this guy is like a king. I think, it was still, his delivery was still terrible. I think a better orator could make mincemeat of the entire aura that these guys have created about Modi. Rahul doesn't have that, because even when I was listening to it, I just thought many of the points he was making, had Modi made those points, he would have phrased them so beautifully that they would have had way more impact, which this guy just didn't have. Like, he says, ye theek nahi hai. It doesn't have the theater that is required.
No, I
in
read
politics.
his speech. I didn't.
You didn't see it. So I just thought it didn't.
But that's the thing. Even though his delivery is so rubbish, and I do agree that he's a terrible orator. Like, he's just not cut out for it. But so he said all this, and then one BJP MP immediately replied saying, "Oh, my father was also killed." Like, no, this is how you make a fairly mediocre speech really stand out from the reactions that it sort of got.
No, I thought that basically is the anchors. Like when Amish Devgan started defending that, he mentioned that Amit Shah, whenever anyone who's to meet Amit Shah, they take off their shoes. I guess he's trying to say, is he a god? Is he like... And Amish Devgan tweeting, in India, it is considered polite to, when you enter someone's house, to take off your shoes. It is hygienic. Like, dude, you're an anchor of some stupid show. Like,
but Gujarati homes do have this kind of tradition. So maybe it's like a...
Tamil homes have them. My own.
We also take off shoes.
But I think in Tamil homes, it's more a caste. At least everyone is expected to take off your shoes because there's no leather is not in the kitchen. My nani was like that. You couldn't take any leather inside the kitchen.
That's the logic to it. I thought it's just like...
No, she couldn't. You could only take khadao inside the kitchen. And there have various reasons, but I just think it's did it make headlines in Oxford, Mehraj, or
in London?
Are you happy?
Was it front page headline on Guardian?
Were you just downing the beers, watching Premier League and Mema Shema?
And no, I mean, I didn't watch the speech but I read reports about it. But I think what he said, I mean, the both points about inequality and the idea of nationhood, they're very important discussions to have, especially at this moment. And not just in India, I mean, throughout the world, especially after the pandemic, there's this growing recognition that something has gone wrong with the economic system we have developed over the last 30, 40 years. Inequality is like gone out of order. In, I think, worldwide, the top 1% or the top 100 billionaires or something, their wealth has increased by several $1 trillion. While on the other hand, by some estimates, about 500 million people have gone back into poverty. In India alone, right now, the top 10% of the population earns about 57% of the national income. That's obscene. And within that, just the top 1% alone earn 22%. And the bottom percent, together, bottom 50%, bottom half of the population, they just about have 13% of the national income. 155 million people live in extreme poverty. And extreme poverty is $1.9, the World Bank figures, which is about 140 rupees. And during the pandemic alone, about 44 million more people have fallen back into extreme poverty. That's more than the population of most countries in the world. Inequality is bad everywhere, but in India, it's really off the charts. And it's been off the charts for a long time. And to have these kind of conversations in a moment like this is very important, because worldwide, these conversations haven't happened unless you have been, like, say, on the socialist or leftist spectrum, Jeremy Corbyn, Bernie Sanders kind of a movement. In India, especially over the last 30 years since liberalization, there's been this, the narrative that has dominated is that India is now becoming an economic superpower. So you can't talk about these small things. And if you really look back, these are the things that the communists used to talk about back in the day. But because they don't have any political heft now, these conversations have fallen down on the radar. Look at all the media, look at all the sort of the intellectual discourse in India right now. These things are not talked about. And these are the things that matter more than anything. These are the things that matter more than even what your idea of nationhood is. And that is the second point of it. The idea that you can't have multiple ideas of what a nation means. I think I have said it before on the podcast only, that India is a continent pretending to be a country. So this idea that because India is the way it is, it should always be like this, there can't be any other arrangement, is just, I mean, for anybody outside of India, this has happened because in India, religion has been turned into this kind of a quasi-religion. And its kind of symbols have become so sacred that if you do anything out of the ordinary that is deemed to be disrespectful or something, it kind of makes you like a blasphemer, sort of. Precisely what happened with Mamata Banerjee the other day, right? So this idea for people outside, it seems so absurd. Out here, you have people, you have Scottish people, you have Welsh people, you have Irish people, many of them elected politicians, like top officials, academics, professors, students, everybody. There are people who are like, who are out and out, who say we are British. There are people who just reject that idea. They say, no, we are Scottish, we're Welsh, we're English, and we want to be separately. Nobody is going and calling them anti-national or seditionists or something like that. These are really stupid discussions to have, to say that somebody doesn't agree with your idea of nationhood, then automatically he should be sort of not being listened to or demonized for that reason. And this isn't just the problem that's been created by the rhetoric of the BJP. I mean, they have contributed a lot of this because it helps them politically. In fact, you could argue this has happened even before the formation of the Republic. During the freedom struggle, this idea of nationhood sort of took hold. And back then, maybe it was out of necessity as well, because you had to unite.
Yeah, otherwise you couldn't get them together. It would be impossible to fight the British.
But afterwards, when you are a sovereign people, these are the conversations you should have. And without these conversations, the whole idea of sovereignty is meaningless. And that's why in this very context, this idea, like the KCR, for example, saying we should maybe rewrite the constitution. Why is that such a bad idea? Having a constitution, for example, or having a state, having a government is really basically this bunch of people getting into a social contract. This is a contract, so we'll arrange our lives, our society like this to the benefit of everybody. Could anybody really argue that the lives of the majority of the people have become better in the last 70, 80 years, or like way better than they were 70, 80 years ago? if that hasn't happened, why shouldn't you rip up the social contract and create a new one?
But I
It's not
think,
something
yeah,
that came
but I
down
think
from God.
that the danger of that is, and I mean, I get the logic of that, but I mean, let's take the example of America, for example, where Trump in his first public appearance since then he's offered a pardon to all the people, the insurrectionists. I mean, in a sense, what he's doing is rejecting the idea of democracy, which I think a lot of BJP supporters in India would also happily do. And I see that, So which is why I think the certain I mean, of course, one can tweak the draft of the constitution, but why democracy is an exercise in an undemocratic basic structure and democratic larger structure is because if everything is thrown up into referendum, tribalism could take over. Like, I think today in India, if it was not just a yes or no referendum, if it was a more party type referendum, like across, because I think yes or no, Modi would probably lose. But in anything else, because he has the largest chunk, he could possibly swing that, let's just suspend election for the next 20 years. Is that okay for us? So I think certain basic structures have to be done by a thought elite. And I've argued for this whole concept of everything has got democratized. So everybody's voice is the same. Sure, everybody has the right. But everybody's voice is not the same when it comes to making sense of things. So the basic structure, the founding fathers have got a basic structure. And I think unless you have another closed set of people who we believe can alter the basic structure, and then everybody else can, talk about the bells and whistles. But if one was to alter the basic structure, I think today it is easier for India to pull off a referendum that suspend elections for 20 years than it is to make it more federal. It's my hunch. I don't have the data for it. But are we ready for that? Because I agree with what you're saying about the constitution. But I think at some basic level, if you go there, then you could have a Trump completely redoing what democracy or nationhood means.
I think the problem with that constitution remark is more that KCR made it. I mean, come on. I really don't want KCR to be rewriting anything about the constitution, considering how, corrupt, how anti-media he is, how anti-dissent in his own state. I wouldn't trust any of the current chief ministers.
I wouldn't trust any of the current politicians. I think the politicians in 1940...
amendments, sure, but I don't trust any of them to rewrite some. I think we already have a good base, like you said. Amendments to it, conversations around it, sure.
So, let Jayashree come in, then Anand can come in.
No, my point is that it isn't about whether we trust a certain politician today to have the capacity to carry out something like reframing an entire constitution. What's happening today is that even the mere suggestion of it is resulting in people saying we should slap sedition charges against him because he has no business even mentioning it as an option, because that itself is anti-national. So
there's been a demand to slap sedition case against KCR?
I'm saying that the fact that he's getting so much criticism and flack.
BJP has said that there should be sedition. They want sedition for everything. Charges.
And at the time when Dr. Ambedkar did write the constitution, he did say that if a future generation wants one, then they should form a new constituent assembly to pass a new rule book and things like that. But we can't even have conversations around that today. I think that is the entire problem. Like, to even remark that there is a problem with our federalistic structure or that it's not working means that we are being in some form of definition not patriotic by criticizing it so much.
Yeah, I think I've in the past also said patriotism, in my view, at least for me, and I think in its essence is not about a country, it's about values. And if your country does not abide by those values and you speak up for those values, you're being as patriotic as like opposing the Vietnam War was not unpatriotic. I think if you have a certain bunch of values. But Anand, you were saying something?
3-4 points. First, the case for thought elite and democracy. So it was Plato's classic disagreement with democracy. He thought that there were too many speakers in a democracy and too few frank ones. So that is an old argument. Second, I would point is about the constitutional the thought of rewriting constitution. So it's also not a new idea. In fact, the BJP government, NDA government under Mr. Vajpayee had set up a constitution review committee under Justice Venkat Chelaiya, and it submitted its report in 2002. And it had suggested few changes, not major ones. So this has been floated. Also, I think that despite everyone saying that you cannot have this conversation, you cannot have these conversations, we are having these conversations. So I think the fact that we are having these conversations on different platforms, not on the scale that many would be happy with, is a good enough sign. And third is about the nationhood and patriotism argument. You see, as Benedict Anderson in early 1980s, I think he said that nations are imagined communities, and it's also a creative project. Just like constitutions are living documents, you can amend. They are not dead good documents, living organisms. Nationalism as an imagined community can be a creative enterprise also. And one aspect that you said, that patriotism is my country stands for these values and we should adhere to it, that is your patriotism. But there is also a different argument which many of the people who may not be very educated, but their idea of nationalism is derived from another source. And here I would like to cite Hegel, the German philosopher. He started with vehemently opposing nationalism. And by the end of his philosophical life, he reconciled to the idea of nation, because he said that people have a tendency to take a pride from the place they come from. And it is not an unnatural emotion. People, just like families, people react differently when you abuse family members as opposed to other people. So similarly, okay, 20% people may not be very moved by it, where they come from, but most people are moved by the place they come from. They want to take pride from where they come from. And from that, the idea of nationalism comes. So you can't be in a philosophical denial of this emotion. That's it.
Yeah, Mehraj, you have anything to add to that before Raman sir and Manisha come in and we move on to the next?
No, this emotion is true. I mean, it's
Yes,
absolutely right.
points,
I think I was
One
more,
sec, Mehraj, let Raman sir come in. Then.
I think I was more nationalist, before 2014. But ever since somebody has started thrusting, that nationalism on me, that creates a problem for me. So here, that is absolutely true. I mean, this is a very natural emotion. When the cricket teams are playing or anything, when even India is playing in hockey, even if it is not a good team, but you really cheer for them. So it happens. It very naturally it comes.
Yeah, but I don't think it's an either or. I think there's an overlap on both in the sense that sure there is, but like after the Second World War, were Germans proud about coming from Germany? They weren't. I mean, they were so ashamed that they couldn't even push back for such a for treaties and terms that were humiliating, and they didn't have the moral authority to fight back because they were ashamed of their Germany. So I think the value that your nation stands for also impacts what you think of it, other than the geography. So yeah, sorry, go ahead, Mehraj.
Two points. One, about this idea that we can't confront or engage with these very difficult conversations, say about like reframing the constitution and not doing this, because there are some people in the society who no longer have purchase in that agreement, who no longer believe in those same values, or who might abuse that. If that is the case, then you have a much, much bigger problem on your hands than just a piece of document. Because that means that contract that sustains that society, that sustains that nation, that's broken at the very fundamental level. So that then it becomes more a moral problem than even a legal problem or a social problem. That's one point. Second point, what Anand was saying about the idea of nationhood, of this nationalism, that because much of this was developed, at least in the modern canon, in the Western philosophy, they were looking at places where either they were small places or they were places which were mostly homogeneous. So this idea that nationalism, because you come from a certain place, you have that belonging, you have that tribal loyalty, that works at small scales, and it works at larger scales also if the population is homogeneous. In India, you have a case right now where there are people all over the place, like in Northeast, in Kashmir, elsewhere, who just don't have purchase in that idea of the nation, but you are thrusting it on them, right? You're coercively doing it to them. And like I said before, also, if you really look at how India was, everybody thinks that 1947 happened and peacefully, there was a peaceful transfer of power and that's how India came about. That's not entirely true. How was Goa made part of India? How was Hyderabad made part of India? How was Kashmir made part of India? How was Sikkim or northeastern states or even Pondicherry? Some of those are like really violent histories. Those are coercive histories. It doesn't suddenly happen. A person's loyalty to where that place comes from, usually that's a very small place.
Right.
And these grand loyalties, they are created over time through political means, through social conditioning, through a lot of things. That's why you have flags and national anthems and stuff like that.
Right.
No, that's completely an aside conversation. I think the one party that has actually successfully restarted conversations on the constitution is BJP with regard to secularism. Even though we didn't adopt secularism at the starting, it was inserted in the preamble in 1976, but I think they have very successfully questioned that aspect of our constitution and has got Indians to really question whether we are secular or we want to be Hindu Rashtra. And these are conversations that you now hear very commonly. Did we really, are we really, I mean, Pakistan got a Muslim majority, Bangladesh got a Muslim nation, why can't India be a Hindu Rashtra? So that conversation, the BJP
It's actually
has
come from that side more than anything. Yeah.
Very successfully.
Yeah, but and regarding the bit about having the conversation, Mehraj, actually, what I was saying was not that we can't have the conversation. I think we can have the conversation, and I agree with Anand on that. I think that conversation is had in several contexts. And this whole, anti-national, so they say on anything, even if you are, wearing a Chinese product on a bad day with China. So I was talking about where I stand on that conversation is that I don't think rewriting the constitution would be a smart idea in the current state of heterogeneity that we have. It is just on economic parameters, on basic human indices, on, I think there has to be a certain acknowledgement or level playing field of information, ideas to have that conversation. If you have that conversation in a country like India right now, the most tribal will prevail. That is I think a country like Sweden can have that conversation. A country like Switzerland can have that conversation.
They're also very small. In that sense
other
also.
Than even small or large depends on how equal you are, how close you are to each other along all these things. But if you're really far apart and there's so many of you, I think you just rip each other apart. That was my point. Yeah.
No, that's very fair. And yeah, of course. And that's the point. If you can't have those conversations, if it's a bad idea to do it now, why? So that's the next question to ponder, right?
And doesn't that just bring you back to the same argument that we've been having for ages, which is since we are such a disparate collection of states sort of crammed together into one entity, that's also what prevents us from having conversations like that in the first place. And that is why we worry about the ability to have conversations on whether we should redo the constitution or not, only because of that disparity.
Anand?
No, that Mehraj's point about India being a very, very different case in context of nationalism. Now, that is correct because, and I also meant that nationalism and nation building is a creative process just because of that. Imagined community, the mere process of extending that community to subsume more and more identities within a territory is a creative process. It's not a static template that this is nation. And India has to be comfortable with a lot of subnational identities to be a confident nation, and that has to coexist. The subnational identities. I am just recalling a funny case that came 2-3 weeks ago in Jharkhand, that there was a new policy of Jharkhand government which gave a lot of powers to council, a tribal council. So the next week they were on the streets demanding a separate state. I mean, in separate country, not a state means separate country.
Okay, nation state.
Yeah,
okay.
Separate country. So
okay, a small thought experiment where we just could weigh in like a minute or a minute and a half. That KCR saying this, Mamata saying that, forget Congress and BJP, the small parties. And I'll just start off with my thesis on this. Oh, and Uddhav Thackeray also was... I think either Casey or Mamata mentioned Uddhav also, or he had endorsed what one of them said. I think all these people who have a strong presence in their state, it is in their interest to have way more, say on how their state is run for them. Because I don't think KCR doesn't imagine he's going to win Varanasi anytime soon. Neither is Uddhav Thackeray winning Chandigarh. Neither is Mamata winning Goa, no matter what they may think. So because, and the Yadavs, for UP. I think
Kejriwal's been away from this conversation though, no?
Because I think he's still, I think, a fence sitter on this because he sees himself as the only one who can both win a party south of the Vindhyas and in the north. And he is the only party who can actually do that right now, who can have that presence. So I think he'll sit on the fence on this. But for all the other parties, if they were to come up with a coalition government like a Deve Gowda or an I.K. Gujral, back in the 90s, I think for them, and I think for India also, if that central government divested a lot more powers to the states, it would be fantastic because neither the Congress will do it nor the BJP. And I think India will be run a lot better if that happens. And that will only happen if the government at the center is made exclusively of the small regional parties. And I think that is the next big idea that I think could actually be a huge game changer for India. Anyone else has any take on this whole conversation with these small parties? Is it a coincidence all of them are saying all this within 2 days of each other?
No, and also just what yesterday or today, Stalin did that thing where he's launching that Federation for Social Justice, where he's written to some 40 parties across India, including the AIA, DMK and opposition parties and so on, inviting them to join to fight this threat of bigotry and stuff. I don't see any one regional leader being able to really lead such a diverse sort of group of people together. So it's a nice theory, but...
Well, hopefully I'll be able to ask HD Deve Gowda how he did. I'll probably be interviewing him week after next. So
doesn't he have COVID?
He's got COVID. So yeah, it was actually supposed to happen this week. The interview didn't happen. So probably week after next, it's going to happen. Anyone else want to weigh in on this before we move on to the next subject?
Yeah, I think, it's kind of obvious that these people are motivated by their political calculations. Hardly any of them are driven by any moral considerations or ethical considerations. But I think we should judge an idea on its own merit rather than where it comes from. Sometimes the best idea can come from the worst of the people.
Yeah, agree. So now I have another quick announcement. We'll have some limited edition merchandise, which is just the Newslaundry at 10. We have a separate mug and some other merchandise just for this. And hopefully our partners who have got the rights for the printed comics, the graphic novels of Kashmir Ki Kahani and Naxal Bari, a new print will be coming out. So we can give that to you as well. So we have all sorts of new merch coming up. And like I said, that auction, we will tell you more about it. Please stay tuned. If you would like to participate in it, there will be a process. So that information will also come to you, but it will only go to subscribers. So if you want to participate in that auction, where you could get something that would hopefully be very valuable 50-70 years from now, कि जब न्यूज़ीलैंड ने start किया था तब ये limited edition one of a kind item आया था. You can participate. So do go to newslaundry.com and click on the subscribe button, because then we'll have your email ID and we will send you the entire process of how you can participate in that auction. And also please contribute to our NL Sena, where we are covering the election. Now, the other issue which has not actually made headlines or been a, very dominant issue as far as primetime is concerned, but it got me thinking of how far is too far when it comes to an attire that is not entirely to your familiarity. It started off in Udupi, where, it started in the college. Then there was a schoolgirl who was told she can't wear her hijab. And then today it's, I think, moved to Mangalore, where there are, I think, about over a dozen or 2 dozen girls who are not being allowed into this school premises who are wearing their hijabs. They said you can't come in with the hijab. And then next day, some people tried to come in with the saffron gamcha. Then the principal said you can't wear a saffron gamcha also, because that is also a identifier. So, it got me thinking that what is rational or reasonable? Is wiping out any sign or visible sign of religiosity a good idea? Will it make us live in more harmony? Or does it have the opposite effect? So let me just get this conversation going, and Raman sir, you tell me first. The most familiar thing, at least as Indians, no matter where you are with the turban. You never question the turban as a religious sign. The turban is there. In fact, most of us who are not Monas and live in the north even know how to do a pony, because you have Sikh friends, and when you're getting ready, quickly, all your friends have to know how to do pony, otherwise you'll never be ready in time. So you never look at turban as a religious identifier. So it's never crossed anyone's mind ki yaar turban hatao. Like when someone says remove your turban in an airport, I'm like, how the hell can they tell someone to remove the turban? But would that extend how much further? Now, at the next level, when I grew up in Dehradun, I was not used to seeing people in hijab. I had never really seen it. I saw that in Delhi more, at least because I lived in an area where you only met other Hindus. Then the saffron
Muslims
gamcha.
also in Uttarakhand don't really wear. I mean,
really
it's
wear
also
hijab.
something that, say, for example, in Kerala, you didn't really, it's a very recent thing to be wearing a hijab, and mostly
then
they
in
didn't.
the south, all my Tamil relatives, that those 3 whatever ash type thing, I was used to seeing that because all my mamas and grandmamas used to wear that, ash, like it wasn't a
But
tikka.
that's a very Brahmin.
Yeah, I mean, it was like
Yeah.
as if you've just basically dipped your head in ash. It was not even a tikka. You were used to seeing it. You never questioned it. But the whole saffron thing and this new red tikka that I've started seeing, it makes me uncomfortable. Now, it is unfair because a hijab doesn't make me uncomfortable. Safa doesn't make me uncomfortable. When I see now, because it's become a sign of, boss, don't mess with me. I've got a safa. Or Hanuman would never, make me stiffen up. But now that angry Hanuman, which became a rallying cry for Hindutva. So would, one be okay saying that, okay, now you can go into college with this saffron thing around you because it's an identifier. I belong to the RSS or the VHP. How far is too far? And does anything make anyone here uncomfortable? I am actually on the fence on removing any side of religiosity, but I would stop at turban. You cannot tell a Sikh to remove a turban. But like I said, that's because that's the thing you're most used to.
Now, these things were really unheard of, way back in 1970s when I used to go to the school. I remember my teacher, Hindi teacher, he used to don this thing, tilak. Then my teacher, political science teacher, even this guy used to come every Tuesday, Hanuman ka tilak laga ke, he used to come. And then I had a school which is run by minority institutions, this Guru Hari Kishan Public School. So where my cousin had gone, he just learned that Gurumukhi, and he's a Hindu by religion. I mean, in my time, these things never mattered. And what we read, about religion, that equal respect for religion, or the state should stay away, from religion. So I think we never heard, any of these kinds. But yes, of late, I also remember the schools, where the Muslims are going in hijab, even in my time. It used to happen. It was very common and it was never objected, But now, I think I think it began with Jharkhand, somewhere where the teachers used to come in hijab, and the teachers were suspended because of that. So now it's catching up in, especially in the state where the BJP is, ruling. So I think I personally feel it should not matter, whether they come in hijab or whether they beard turban, so long as we are not preaching religion, in the classroom.
Okay. Manisha, your view?
I think in India, it's a bit silly because we don't have this committed position of no religious symbols in the public space. In fact, our secularism has meant that the public space will have space for all sorts of religiosity and religious symbols. So we're not like France, which is very kind of militant about its secularism in the sense. So this kind of a rule is a bit strange in India because you're not going to have people who won't wear a cross or who won't wear a tikka or who won't wear the abaya or the hijab. So such a rule is obviously purely it's targeted as Muslims to my mind, and it doesn't make sense in India. I don't think we've had that tradition. We've never had this, that you can't wear religious symbols.
But is there anything that would make you uncomfortable being in a room with someone? At what stage would you say, okay, this makes me a bit...
I think in a school, if a teacher is wearing fully covered, like face covered, that I would find odd as a student.
Full face covered? Okay.
Because that would just be odd for me.
Okay.
And I think for a lot of students.
But
the thing also I think in India, most women, even Muslim women, I think even in this case, it's mostly the head covered.
Yeah, it's not
the face. But with COVID, basically you have a mask, so you're effectively covered. So.
But would you be okay with when you see, like when our notables had that Jab Mulle Kaate Jayenge sloganeering happening, and there was a very obvious dress code of the saffron scarf and the tilak.
Yeah,
would you be okay with 5 such people here coming? They're not shouting that, but dressed like that every day. Is it a political statement for you?
It'll immediately make me think they're from Bajrang Dal or something like that.
Okay.
So
it will make you think they're from Bajrang.
Yeah.
So it will make you uncomfortable.
Yeah. But I'm saying in a school setting, the only thing that would bother me is probably face covered, like ghungat or whatever. Any woman who's fully... it would be odd. Like in Rajasthan also, you have women who cover their entire face till they wear an eye. So for someone like that, I think that is something I'm not used to.
Okay.
I think you should not preach religion. That's it.
Head as school teachers would make me very uncomfortable anyway.
Okay.
So that is
Anand,
not a question.
what would you draw the line anyway? Is there, be as honest as you can, because I know this is something that most people are not going to, because you have to be politically correct, you see. But the fact is, there is a point which some of us aren't comfortable with. Let's face it. Is there a point for you, Anand? And then we'll come to our Mehraj and
It was
Jayashree.
never a situation in our times. I mean, you never
More
thought
often than not, I don't notice people in a room. So, I don't know whether. So,
Very convenient.
yeah. So, see, of course, the points you people made before me are all valid. I think in a country of believers, you cannot have the protocol of a non-believing nation, like French secularism or so. So it's a country teeming with believers of different religions, and sanitizing public spaces with religious symbols has not gone down well. From time to time, these issues have come to public discussion. I remember in 1980s, I was not adult enough to follow the discussions then, but I read about that an Akali politician, while entering parliament,
Simranjit Singh Mann.
he said that if no, Kirpan.
Simranjit Singh Man's Kripan was as big as a talwar. I remember.
He had a maybe that was for security reasons, and then the insurgency was on rise.
Yeah, he insisted that he should be allowed to carry it.
So he had made the statement that if Hindus can go with Jannah and Muslims with skull caps, why can't I? That was in 80s, mid-80s somewhere. Now coming to this, the problem is with the association of certain degree of identity politics with certain symbols. And you can have politicization of any symbol. Means one is the manifest political assertion related to certain symbols, and but mind it is not a very pervasive phenomenon. So someone with a tilak or a skull cap, that may scare, or people may be uncomfortable only in very, very, very limited environment. Means a lot of people,
not in the market.
Yeah,
Sure.
a lot of people don't have any issue with that. Most of the people don't have any issue with that. And political associations with sartorial statements, anything can be. Now scholars say that Mr. Ambedkar's very smart and sharp Western suits was a political statement of the Western liberalism, and whole Westernization being a liberating experience for himself than the Indian attire. So you can have various association of sartorial statements with political alignments.
Right. Jayashree, your take, is there anything that is too far for you, or you don't care no matter what?
I mean, okay, so I agree with Manisha in that I think India is a very religious country. We're not like France, except that, the idea is that the state should be equidistant and maybe not incorporate religion into the way it's run. In these specific circumstances involving these children and students, it's, the issue is not about a religious symbol. It's only about the minority religious symbol. So, and to the extent where I think that Karnataka minister had he called it an international conspiracy that all these students are suddenly popping up wearing hijabs, which is just such an annoying thing to say. But it's par for the course. For what makes me uncomfortable, so I went to a very, very Hindu, very dominant caste, very upper class school. It was to the extent where we had to recite slokas on a daily basis. You had to learn Upanishads and things like that. We had to wear vibhuti or ash or kumkum on your forehead. Even if you were one of the 4 or 5 Muslim or Christian students in my school, you were also expected to wear these Hindu markers on your forehead. So to the extent where now, as an adult and sort of becoming a slightly better person, I feel like I've gone completely in the opposite direction, where it is now sort of overtly Hindu displays that make me very uncomfortable, because, and especially given the politics of the times that we live in and all that, and all it is like what you said about nationalism before. I think, or maybe Raman sir said that, after the war, how Germans felt that sense of shame of being associated with a nation, and now living and seeing the kind of stuff that we see around us today, you do feel that sort of attached shame to the religion in which you were brought up. So that is mine.
Okay. Before Mehraj comes in, like the school that I went to, it was clear that you couldn't keep a beard. You weren't allowed, except if you were Sikh. We had Mahmood Ur-Rahman Farooqi was my senior. He was a house captain of Kashmir House. No one was allowed to keep a beard. You had to shave. You had to have a crew cut.
In Doon school?
Yeah. You couldn't, and in Vellum girls, you could not wear a hijab, right? So tomorrow, if a Muslim in Doon were to say, well, then the Sardi should not be allowed to wear his patka or his safa. You see, it is unfair if you take it.
You can't wear a headscarf also?
I have never seen anyone. I don't know if it's a rule, but I would be very surprised if they allow it.
Also with the beard, if Sikhs are allowed, so should Muslims be allowed.
They should, correct. But I never saw it, and I don't think anyone had the guts to question that I should also be allowed to keep a beard. Now,
are those the rules
but
now?
But also, I think there's one thing.
I think it's the same as Fauji rules, that basically crew cut, clean shaven. That's it. You can keep a mush at best, but you can't twirl it up and all that shit.
Why you may not have seen
Like, for example, Mayo College, when the Mayo principal asked all the Rajput boys to remove their balis, because, there were Raja Rajwadas, kisi ki 50 lakh, 1 crore ki. The board of governors pushed back. They almost had him sacked. That you cannot ask a Rajput to remove his kaan mein jo bali pehni hai.
Army rules don't have the religious
but what I'm saying is, but they do make an exception for a Sikh. So another religion can say, then why should that exception not be made for me? A Jew can say, I should be allowed to wear that. I don't know what it's called. But yeah, Mehraj.
Just want to add one quick thing. In Doon school, you probably didn't meet a Muslim. Maybe you never had this conversation because only elite Muslim families would go there and they are less likely to have these prominent markers. I don't think,
yes.
I mean, this is just something that I observed. It's just anecdotal, but rich, upper caste Muslim families usually don't have the markers that you see on people who would afford Doon school,
sure,
basically.
But actually, many of them were scholarship students, so no.
Also, wasn't there some case like a few years ago where some Muslim soldier tried to sue the Indian army because
for not being allowed to get beard? I mean, I'm sure
like
this comes up. But yeah, you tell me, Mehraj, what is your take on this? And is there an inevitability to it being unfair to some religion at some stage?
And what do you feel uncomfortable with?
I think the sort of a basic fundamental principle when you're dealing with cultural and social norms and traditions in a civilized society is that unless it violates somebody's 3 natural rights, which is the life to liberty, right to life, and right to a life of dignity, nobody should be have any business about any of that. No state should regulate what a person can wear, cannot wear, what their customs are, what their traditions are, unless they impinge on these 3 rights. That being said, what is now happening, obviously, it's not so much that they're trying to separate religion and state. It's the other way around. They're trying to bring in religion, or rather religious kind of bigotry, for want of a better word, into the discourse. Because somebody wearing a hijab, for example, or a turban, how does that affect anybody's right to do anything?
And is there anything that makes you uncomfortable?
So I think sort of if you are a Kashmiri living anywhere in Delhi or elsewhere in India, you kind of have that intuitive sense of where you should hold back, where you should like open up and stuff. And that, so I remember this one time I was traveling on a train from Delhi to Jammu, I think, and I was sleeping on the upper berth, and there were these 2 gentlemen on a lower berth, and they were just talking among themselves, like just regular conversation. But a lot of it was like that casual sort of anti-Muslim bigotry and stuff. So you kind of pick on it. It's not like somebody is wearing, say, a saffron gamcha and I'll instantly feel uncomfortable. I mean, you just know. You look at a person. Sometimes it's maybe out of paranoia. Sometimes it's for good reason. But you just look at a person and you know, okay, maybe I should be a little cautious or stuff like that. I don't think there's anything like overtly that fixed category that if there's these things, I'll feel uncomfortable. These things, I won't feel uncomfortable. Yeah.
This kind of uncomfortability, it comes even, I being a Hindu, when I went to Kashmir this time, I found things very hostile. I go to a shop, I ask for a cola is there. nahi denge. So I met those kind of things, very unfriendly people. So which is making me think that I will not come to this state again. So you feel uncomfortable.
Sorry to hear that, sir.
No, I'm telling you, it happened. So
yeah, of course.
So that hostility you do
sense. You're saying it has nothing to do with what one is wearing. I do think that
some shopkeepers are very lazy also. So yes,
could be.
You can see a product that is there, they will not move.
They don't want
नहीं
to
यार,
work. So as Anand has often said, never blame on conspiracy what you can blame on
Laziness.
Laziness, yeah.
Laziness
No,
also.
then I also see a Muslim shop barber in Uttarakhand in my this area where he was very popular. He's got a very good shop. Everybody comes here. So suddenly these saffron guys, they come and they fix a rate for him. You will charge only 5 rupees for shave.
and he can't say no.
They changed the entire thing. No, he went to the police and
The police helped him.
fortunately the police intervened and he's getting his rate. So, such people are uncomfortable.
Okay, so before I move on to the emails, I want, anything from 2 to 5 minutes. Basically, it's been 10 years of Newslaundry. Thank you all so much. Just to give you an idea, about 90% of the people who, when we suggested that we're going to do an ad-free news platform, I told us it would fail. It would not work. Till even as far as 4-5 years ago. But it has worked, and it has worked thanks to all of you. We can confidently say we are easily sustainable even if we don't do our events. Because many of you say we should stop doing events because our Media Rumble event is, we have sponsors like Google, Facebook, Twitter, UN Women, Oxfam. Now, I'm sure many of you don't think UN Women or Oxfam is going to have any influence on us, but there's a discomfort that you should not have any sponsors. So even if we have no events, we still don't need to do those. I think they're good brand building exercises because to bring out a report like the Gender Index and the Caste Index, it costs like upwards of 30-40 lakhs. We cannot put that much into a report. So that has to be funded by others. But the fact is that a news platform which is only funded by subscribers worked. Now, what next? Any ideas that anybody has on what Newslaundry can hope to do? Because we are not constrained by what a classical, corporation or, funded organization is. We can try experiments, fail, try something else. And we've been doing that with shows, podcasts, models, everything. Now, I propose in the next 10 years, we transform what we understand of infrastructure. What is a media infrastructure? Like, one large organization that sent us a legal notice we are fighting in court. As part of the legal notice, there's 5 pages that tell us how great they are. That we are so many years old, we are so respected, we have whatever 42 or 48 offices around the country, etc., etc. So we understand that as these are offices that this news organization has. That means they have presence in 8 cities and with 40 offices. And that shows their spread, that they are so national. What if we change what it means? Rather than have something we own, we have a hive. Like I have asked for, if you are a subscriber, thank you so much for your subscription. You fund our journalism, you fund our shows. But if you can offer more, we've started this Friends of Newslaundry database. It's a directory of people who can offer. Many of you have offered your cars when Manisha was in Kolkata. Many of you have offered your offices as your homes. You can come and stay here. You can, use this office for broadband. Some of you may have, offices that are not used all the time. You may have homes that are way more than what you need. Or at least you can give it for 2 hours to one of our correspondents. So about 25 to 30 of you have written in. Thank you. We have your details. We will do a due diligence because we don't want to be compromised, A, on safety for our colleagues, and B, that if one of you happen to be contesting the election, they say, inka crew to hamare ghar thera hua hai. So we'll be doing that due diligence. But other than that, now imagine if instead of having a directory of 40, over the next 10 years, we have 3,000. That means Newslaundry has a hive, a mesh, a network of 5,000 locations in 40 cities in India, where a reporter can go sit with the laptop, upload, shoot a sequence. I mean, we could have an infrastructure bigger than the biggest news organization.
Yes.
I think it's possible to do. We will completely change what infrastructure means. We may have 2 tucha piddly offices of 5,000 square feet in Delhi, but across the country, we have access to 2,000 places. Imagine if we could do that. We would be bigger than the biggest media house. That means if our reporter is in, let's say, Delhi, and you are in Rohini, and office is 30 kilometers away, there's a subscriber who is there in our database, and we can write a software. Now we have our own programmers where you can fill in your details. We have a due diligence process. All you need is a group of 4 or 5 people managing this database. I think it's possible to do. I think if you guys can contribute to this, and no pressure, but if you have a home, like many of you have very big homes that you've offered, that you can take a 1 bedroom and you can stay here when you're covering it. Some of you have offered, I don't have a bedroom, but I have a study where your crew can come, they can upload, have broadband, because while covering elections, while reporting, it's very hard to always find something when you're on the street.
Internet's always a huge concern.
Internet is a huge concern. So imagine if we could do that. I think that could be the next big mountain that we could scale, and we could completely transform what news gathering means. And then it becomes even more collaborative, and it is even more not dependent on an entity, on one corporation buying real estate or renting real estate, on one set of investors. Now, if we wanted to set up 5 more offices, fine, we can be sustainable, but we don't have the money to set up 5 more offices. But if we have this, let's say someone has an office in Lucknow and we hire a correspondent there, we don't have to hire a separate office and set for them. They say, "Hamare office mein jagah hai. One person can come and sit, 20 square foot spaces there." So just imagine how we could transform what a collaborative news enterprise looks like. So that is my idea for the next 10 years. We have started putting together a directory called the Friends of News Laundry. Just write in to us at subscription@newslaundry.com. I repeat, subscription@newslaundry.com, and tell us, what can you offer? Can you offer a cup of tea and 2 hours window for a reporter to come and upload and type out their story? Can you offer a room 8 foot by 10 foot where we can conduct an interview which is fairly well lit? Can you offer a place to stay? Can you offer a car? What can you offer? And over the next 3 or 4 years, if you can set up a directory of a few thousand, then next time someone sends us a legal notice saying we have 40 officers, I'll send them back saying we have 5,000 beta. Ja. Okay.
And we're coming next to Uttarakhand and Punjab. So yes, please.
And Western UP.
And Western UP. So hit us up on anything. And of course, UP, but towards the later phases. So
please write to subscription@newslaundry.com and tell us which city, what can you offer, and let's get this database going. And don't mind if we do a due diligence, you understand where I'm coming from, because we cannot just send someone and then say, "Haan, wahan thehar lo, pata chala ki raat ko na camera raha, na cameraman, na reporter." So by the way, Kamal, thank you so much for your offer in Punjab. We will be in touch. Hopefully our team can come and partake of your hospitality and very generous offer to stay.
I say it could be dangerous also.
That's what I'm saying. That's why we have to do diligence, no? So that is my big idea for the next 10 years. Anyone who wants to go next? Mehraj, Manisha, Jayashree, Raman sir.
I will think only in terms of content. So I would, first of all, I think I would love to have a large network of reporters so that we can get good reports from all over the country. We should not look like North India centric. I think I would love good stories from Northeast, East India. So that's the network, the larger network. This is one thing that I expect. And secondly, I think we would like to the original content is something that I personally believe in. I do not want to appropriate. That's what I keep telling my reporters. Our reporters are not very experienced. So I am not happy most of the time, because we do research and we need a good ideation, sharp ideas, good execution of it. So that's what I'm going to concentrate on, to get original content, the stinging content, something which is going to make much more impact.
Okay, Manisha?
I think if we could be an alternative to television, that is what I'd really like to see, because we do crib a lot about TV, and Atul and I both do these weekly shows talking about how bad the discourse is. But if we can provide an alternate platform, an alternate, I want, like, in the next 10 years for people to not watch TV and say, "Hey, we just watch News Laundry," because it covers everything, which means covering news needs, having bulletin shows, having special shows, having documentaries, but to be able to be like a channel in that sense. I'd love to be a channel. And a lot of people say that, you should be a satellite channel on that. So we don't need that. But on YouTube, if we could be a full-fledged channel that has an array of shows, and it's very hard to do that. It's not the easiest thing, production and video. And I feel also that, so this is something, and I want to plug here, our latest show, which is another election show. We're doing a little segment on it called The Morning Show, where we discuss the papers and we bring on a journalist from that area to talk about issues of a state. So typically what Delhi journalists do is they land up in a place, they'll speak to all the local journalists, they'll get all the intel, and then they'll do an analysis. So what we are doing here is we get those journalists on board and talk to them in a freewheeling 1-hour conversation. I think a lot of people who listen to Hafta don't like watching videos. Maybe they prefer podcasts. So you can also listen to it as a podcast, but do listen to it. It's really our attempt at changing conversations around elections. I think the Goa episodes have been well received, and we've tried to cover everything in it.
And you got fantastic guests.
Yeah, we've got amazing guests. Seriously, like there's a lot of complaint on Hafta also that, you don't have fresh voices and all that. So listen to that. We've really got some really interesting, fascinating guests who've, told us so much about Goa. Not just the politics, but the history of it, the geography, the gossip, what matters to a Goan voter. And it's really refreshing. So do catch that. And I would want to personally be an alternative to television.
So immediately in my head, I've done the math.
I totally agree with this. And
it's about 30 lakhs more we need per month. Though, because then you have to have 8-hour shifts, right? You have to have full-time production control room.
Yeah.
That is there 24/7, and you cannot have as
but
a
we don't
producer.
need to be a 24-hour channel.
No, but you have to have that option.
You have to have programming.
We should emerge as a digital channel. We don't need to have a separate
we don't
TV.
Broadcast, sure.
Broadcast, but yes, maybe OTT later sometime.
Sure,
and
okay.
I think one very useful thing that people kind of ignore in journalism, there's a lot of information overload from everywhere. And now with digital platform, there's also a lot of how you should feel about a news kind of journalism. But there's a lot of value. You meet a lot of people, they just want to know the news. They just want to know in clear, fun to access, easy to understand language, what the news of the day is. So if we could actually do really good explainer journalism, which is really important, I think. We tend to, because it means collating information from a lot of other people, we tend to ignore it, and we tend to think that investigative journalism is the best, or only a deep dive story can do justice to an issue. But I think if you can really explain to people what's happening around them without telling them how to feel about it, that will really take us far, I think, in terms of programming.
Jayashree?
I don't have much else to add, though. I like the idea of shows, only because I think that, like, based on what I see in my own family, is that, okay, you see a news report in text, fine. But then if you see a video of something, then automatically the presumption that it is true is much higher, because people tend to somehow believe things that they see in video, even if they're completely fake. So I think I do sometimes wonder about this entire, I feel like as over the next 10 years, this entire issue of what fake news and what is facts and misinformation is only going to get greater and greater. So like, I know a lot of news organizations in the West, like they do stuff like collaborative reporting, where you allow readers to sort of participate in your process of writing or researching or fact checking. And I'm a little bit like mixed about it, because I mean, yeah, it does allow for more transparency, but also what is the cost? The cost is that you're allowing complete strangers into your entire journalism process just to make it clear. So I do think that collaborative journalism has some sort of future, but I still need to sort of work it out in my head.
How do you figure out the filters? Sure.
Yeah, like, like I think PBS did this entire thing where they made a short documentary, but then they released like some 100 hours of footage just to be as transparent as possible about what they actually collected. So I think that's a bit of an extreme step, but I do think that news organizations need to worry about it.
Okay. Mehraj, what would you like us to experiment with?
First, I think congratulations are in order, because when people told you that this won't work back in the day, they were not wrong. Because research shows about, no, seriously, research shows that about more than 90% of media startups fold within the first 3 years. And media startups that actually run entirely on subscription revenue, they're just, even in Europe, there are only a handful of them. So that's quite an achievement. So congratulations.
Yes, to us all.
I think that's also a roundabout way of saying we should have another party when I come back, because I missed the last one.
Okay, we will. We shall have a party when you're back. Will you welcome back Mehraj party? Done. Promise.
So the other thing is, I mean, I think Raman sir already mentioned this original content, and Manisha also mentioned, but if you really winnow everything down to what journalism has to offer right now in this moment, there are two things. One is original investigative ground reporting, like as much as possible of investigative reporting, ground reporting, and analytical, even if it's opinion, very analytical, very thought out opinion. And the second thing is quality, independent of the format, whether you want to do it video, audio, or text. Quality. What that quality means, I mean, that's a bigger conversation we can have like offline. And why these two things are the most important, because right now media is no longer just an information sort of an economy. This is an attention economy. Why would somebody get off from their Twitter feed, their Facebook feed, their Instagram feed, their Netflix feed and read your stuff or watch your stuff? What are you giving that person to take their attention away from all that, which gives them a dopamine hit, which is like easy to consume, which has everything to offer to grab their attention? Take that attention away. That is the most difficult job right now. It's not difficult to produce good journalism because all you have to do is the basics of journalism we learn in school. That's easy to do. What is most difficult to do is to produce such compelling journalism that it'll get your reader off social media, off Netflix, off other things to come to you. And that can only happen if you have very original content and if you have very quality content. So that's what we should focus on.
Okay, thank you.
Forward.
Anand?
2-3 points. First, I'm just reacting to your media infrastructure thing. I think you just have to get the human resource in order the space, asking for a space, and this is not very relevant because correspondents don't need, digital technology don't need a space. In a provincial capital like Patna, I have seen many correspondents of major newspapers and channels just wasting the resources of their parent company. And so they don't need it. You just pay a salary and ask them to do that. They can do that kind of typing their stuff from their room. So why they need a space? So and
दिल्ली से पटना तो जाएगा और रहेगा होटल में ये मतलब
no if he means कि अगर कोई already है,
अगर already पटना में है.
No, he is talking about network of correspondents.
No, network of logistics.
Logistic, but you are assuming that your correspondent is permanently stationed there.
No.
Suppose like Manisha and gang are going to Dehradun or they're going to.
I was thinking you are far more ambitious. So
that I said कि we should have a network.
That I don't know if you can have so many correspondents, but yeah.
So if you plan to do that, never give them a allowance for a space or something. That is all. So a lot of cheating goes on there. So second is that about yes, I think it is better to be an object of criticism than criticizing. So news gathering and putting yourself to for criticism rather than say criticizing.
Critique.
Yes. So what Manisha was saying, that news gathering and putting your own original content. So it is just like you are a political commentator or a politician yourself. So it is far more ambitious to be a politician. So I am not discounting the former's role, but if you are ambitious, join politics. So,
but I still think media critique is important. I don't agree with you there. I do think that is very important.
No, but I also get feedback that in our media critique also, I mean, well
critique
taken,
and reporting,
but we need to add something to it so that we should also there should be something more. I mean,
adding
something
to the
of our
conversation.
own, something of our own.
No, but now that's why we had so many reporters. Carry on, yeah.
No, media critique is a very niche area. It can be like newspaper. There are newspaper columns of media critics. 1799 wrote 20 years for Hindu, a media critic.
In fact,
column.
Mihir used to write one for Express.
But the Hindu is a mainstream newspaper. It is not a media. So you can have a space for it, but you will. Third is what Mehraj said. It is important that you see a lot of these digital platforms are event driven. Even say like these elections now, it's a version of moment marketing in what, like there is a moment, there is a political event. Even fact-finding reportage is more of a moment marketing because something has made news because of information or misinformation, and you fact-check it, and your fact-checking becomes another event. So it is that you are not stationed or entrenched in a news space and gathering news, but you are reacting to something. So to add quality and to be taken more seriously, you have to be very, very entrenched in the news space. You cannot be just event-driven and doing parachute reporting. Yes.
Okay. Right. Those are the ideas we have. So thank you so much. If you guys have any ideas of what we can aim to achieve that can radically transform not just the relationship between news professionals and news consumers, but in news gathering, in what we refer to as infrastructure building, or anything else. Write to us at subscription@newslaundry.com, or you can write to me directly at Abhinandan Sekhri @gmail.com.
One thing I wanted to add, I think that Mehraj's point on quality and attention economy is really well taken, because, and I'm glad, like, I'm guessing he's thinking about all of this because he's there, but too many journalists think that people owe them their attention. Just because I've written a story, people should read it. But no, it's,
This is really like the biggest question facing journalism right now.
Yeah.
Is how to not just get readers, but paying readers. I mean, sort of the survival of media going forward depends on this question.
And it comes with a little respect for your readers and viewers' time and intelligence, rather than assuming that you're doing some God's work and people owe you their attention.
And along the same lines, just the due diligence that Manisha expects should be done of the places that are offering. Maybe they want to do due diligence ki pata chala ki, Manisha आई और सुबह न्यूजीलैंड की टीम निकल गई और एक चीख निकली उस मकान से और कुछ नहीं मिला. It can also be the other way around. Manisha and crew came, stayed in the house, और अगली सुबह उस घर में सिर्फ लाशें मिली. So people, it can be the other way also. Are we safe?
Well, yeah, come to think of it, that's a legit fear. Okay.
Now let's get the emails before we get everybody's recommendations.
Rinzan says, I just want to say that I'm very impressed with the election coverage by Manisha and co in Goa. I was not thinking about contributing to NL Sena, but content I saw on YouTube made me contribute. Thank you. Wish you good luck. Thanks so much, Rinzan.
Thank you, Rinzan.
Hope we do better and hope we are able to just do better and be worth your time. Srinath says, I have finally gotten a 6-month subscription. I was subscribing on and off because of financial issues. This message is specifically for Abhinandan. The previous hafta you had mentioned that your niece had pointed out that there was not a single woman in your wall of heroes. You have a wall of heroes?
Yeah.
With Che and Gandhi.
Then say would be heroine, no?
No, hero, I guess, fine.
You have no women as heroes. Past few years, I have had a similar conversation with myself, and these are some of my recommendations. Aruna Roy, first person I could think of, and I think she's gotten the right balance of activism and a type of politics that aligns with government procedures. Secondly, Savitribai Phule, she should be celebrated all over the country, and if we think that lower classes / castes have made some progress in this country, then isn't possible without her. It wasn't possible without her. Finally, someone who's alive and not a Savarna, Mayawati. To survive in politics with such misogyny is no joke, and then she decided to ally with SP. Suddenly, everyone cares about her honor.
Okay.
She's began campaigning today, by the way.
Yes, I saw that speech of
yesterday,
hers
yeah.
yesterday. Okay, this email is from Anonymous. Doesn't want his or her identity revealed. So Anonymous has sent a link, and it is in Bengali. And Anonymous says, wanted to share this link. It's in Bengali, but understandable for all. It is so apt for the current political situation of our country. I don't understand why opposition parties can't make and circulate such videos to help the masses of North India realize what is happening in our country. And the link is in the show notes. You can see the video that has been recommended by Anonymous.
Next email is from Karthik. Hi NL team, I want to flag Abhinandan's repeated claims that the Modi government doesn't have any economic agenda whatsoever. He says he hates Modi. That is his prerogative. I'm not saying BJP's economic agenda is good, but one would expect some rational argument from a Hafta panelist on such claims, given many citizens vote BJP mainly for its economic promise. I think such loose statements put off many potential NL subscribers who don't hate BJP but tune in to get different perspectives. I want to ask Abhinandan and other panelists who stay mute on such claims, how do they analyze various economic reforms done by the current dispensation, such as bankruptcy code, GST, etc.? Specifically, why would someone with no economic agenda invest significant political capital and intent, quote unquote, execution was bad, to pursue farm reforms, land acquisition bill, demonetization, etc.? Finally, wouldn't it be great to invite reporters on BJP beat like Nistula, Liz Matthew to answer some of these questions? Nice recommendations. I don't think Liz will come because Indian Express has a podcast and they don't allow for them to go to other platforms, but we can ask Nistula.
Nistula has been on our podcast, but Karthik, just two things I want to correct. When you make a statement that is so absolutely extreme, it changes what was initially said. You've said, I want to flag Abhinandan's repeatedly, the Modi government doesn't have an economic agenda whatsoever. My actual statement and claim is that they don't have an economic agenda. Theirs is a cultural project. Modi does not, in my view, have any economic project. It's this fatura that has been floated. The RSS project from the beginning was a cultural project. And in my view, that is what Modi wants to execute. Now, in so doing, that doesn't mean he will stop governing. I don't believe that the BJP has a sports agenda, but they sent one of the most successful and well-rounded Olympic contingents. But that doesn't mean sports is the priority. So that is one correction. Like when I say X, the corollary doesn't become true, that they have no economic agenda whatsoever. When you take over, you have to run stuff. Like I believe Khattar is a buffoon, the Chief Minister of Haryana. But that doesn't mean he is going to make faces and jump around all day. He will also have to govern. And secondly, I have not said I hate Modi. I can't stand what the RSS stands for. I mean, my views on politicians are not so extreme because I believe their approach to everything changes politically depending on the age that they live in. So yeah, just those two things I want to correct. But I think
GST
if you're saying that the demonetization is a demonstration of an economic agenda, I think fairly easily argue against that. I think it was no serious economist anywhere in the world thought it was a good idea. It was a complete Tughlaki, buffoonish idea, which has turned out. And yeah, I mean that's my. I still think that Modi's agenda, or the BJP agenda, is not an economic project for India. It is a cultural project.
As opposition, I think BJP had opposed GST. GST is not an idea mooted around their time. It was much earlier, and that there should be one tax. Yeah. So, but he gave it a name of he owned it up by calling it one nation, one tax, and so it's not a policy as such.
I was going to say that maybe not like an economic agenda, but I think that an economic agenda is in general to sort of promote neoliberal policies, slight dismantling of the public sector, then mutually beneficial relationship with the private sector. And I mean, if you look at farm laws, land acquisition, environmental clearances, all of these sort of fit into this broad sort of definition. So yeah, I mean, I think economists would perhaps support the demonetization plan, but also, I think it's just this wrong-headed idea of focusing on formalization as the solution to everything. Like both demonetization and GST sort of assume that gutting the informal sector will promote the formal sector, but the informal sector is vast. So gutting all these livelihoods without a proportionate rise in the formal sector to offset it, it's just very wrong-headed, poor approaches to what could at some level be construed as an economic agenda, but overall, I wouldn't call it that.
In fact, its cultural policy offsets everything. Its cultural policy overshadows, even if they are doing something on the economic side, we don't really notice it. This present regime appears more like a patriarchy, and who is given, this preaching us, religion and preaching us nationalism. That's how I feel. I mean, most of the time.
I also just see, when the leaders you pick determine what is your agenda. You see the chief ministers they pick, see the cabinet ministers they pick. If your cabinet ministers who are, in charge of stuff like HR, etc., are telling us about internet of the Mahabharata time, I mean, who you pick as your second level leadership determines what you want to do with your power. And I think it's a no-brainer of who they've picked.
Next email is from Abhi, says, "Hi NL team, my critique is on the first part of Hafta 364. The discussion with Sumaya should have been on her specialization, neuroscience, and not COVID in Australia. Understandably, quite a lot of assertions were off point. First, Australia is a federation of states. States have their autonomous health systems and vary quite a lot. While one can freely travel from Victoria to New South Wales, Western Australia is closed for inbound travel. It was said that in Australia you're fined for not taking vaccination. Quite the contrary. I know quite a few people who chose not to vaccinate. Of course, the governments put restrictions that make life of unvaccinated difficult. It is same as you can perform all functions without having to have a phone or internet banking. It's just more tedious. Fines are heavy for breaking protocols such as home quarantine. Police visits are frequent, and if you're missing during that period, you might as well sell your home." Okay, point noted.
All right.
Ayush says, Dear NL team, I come from a family that has always voted for SP or its Lohite socialist predecessors. And I must say that there seems to be a huge difference in the SP's pitch this time. It seems that the SP isn't just pandering to non-Yadav OBCs for this particular election, but has brought structural and ideological changes to the party. With the BSP's decline, the SP has aggressively postured to cover their lost ground, and it has tried to distance itself from the traditional Parivarvad Gundaraj moniker, although they have fielded the maximum number of candidates with criminal charges against them. The party has brought back its social justice narrative that it had lost over the past 5-10 years. Despite this, I hear many anti-BJP voices call the SP a casteist party who, like the BJP, polarize voters on caste rather than religion. I find this absolutely absurd. Caste is a reality of a society, and representation is the first step to break down those barriers. If someone talks about those realities, how is it casteism? Please let me know your thoughts.
Well, does anyone have a thought on this?
It is just like when I teach, I have to repeat the same thing every day. So we have discussed it so many times. So sometimes you don't like hearing your voice so many times over the same topic. That's why I think we have discussed it a lot of times.
But yeah, I mean, yes, you can't move away from caste, but yeah, it's just too complicated discussion. Then Anurag Tiwari says, hi, I'm a subscriber since 2013-14. I'm a banker, an ordinary subscriber, unlike other subscribers with unpronounceable degrees and job profiles. Nevertheless, what is important is that we all agree on one thing, that's pay to keep news free. Looking forward to the assembly election coverage. Keep up the good work. Abhinandan ji, what's the program on the app and Kashmir Ki Kahani graphic novel? I'm eagerly waiting for both these. So Anurag, I believe the app, the test run is already being carried out as we speak. It's been carried out for the last week or so. It has been sent out to a whole bunch of you subscribers, many of you who contributed to the NL Sena project. There are some tweaks and niggles that are being fixed. By and large, it's looking really nice. I'm hoping over the next week, the trial should be complete. It's taking a slightly longer to put on the App Store because the App Store, for some reason, it got rejected twice. So we've just made whatever that payment you have to make to get, process is on. But the Android one has been tested for a while now. I'm hoping in the next 15 days, if the App Store also accepts it, I think there's a certain period of time from the time you're submitting to them approving it. There's a fixed 14, 20 days or whatever it is. But otherwise the app is 95% done. And the Kashmiri Kahani graphic novel also should be out within this month. Just
on the previous mail by Ayush, just remember that in Goa we met a guy from, I think Etawah, on the beach selling kakdi. He comes there for... So we were just talking about UP, elections, and he very clearly said कि अहीर लोगों का गुंडागर्दी बहुत होता है और हम तो योगी को ही वोट देते हैं. So that kind of sentiment among BJP supporters and non-Yadav OBCs is very strong, that SPs in power means gundai by the Yadavs. And this is to a certain degree true to Mulayam's time. People say that Akhilesh did not, he tried to change that, but you have a lot of people call back to that time that you couldn't register a complaint against a Yadav if they were involved in a crime. There were, criminal syndicates that he would kind of, not promote, but would turn a blind eye to. And it is true to a certain extent that during Mulayam's time, at least, when they had the power, there was a lot of criminal elements that were allowed to sort of function freely. So maybe that's why that BJP can effectively call back to those times and tell their voters that don't vote for them because those times will come back.
The RJD and NDA analogy in Bihar, same.
In fact, we've discussed this also, like Anand said so many times. I have brought out the Vishal Raila that was held back when I was...
And Akhilesh is also trying his best, but saying that there are no criminal elements in SP is absolutely wrong.
And also the BJP's Gundagardi under Yogis doesn't impact Hindus at all. It only impacts Muslims.
Yeah.
For them,
I guess.
So for majority of Hindus, it means a crime-free state because they are not impacted by what a Yuva Vahini does or what Bajrang Dal does.
The next email is from B. So B says, with Kejriwal's slippery slope finally reaching the anti-conversion law, will Abhinandan still say that it's just it's political and Kejriwal cannot stoop lower in ethics just for power? It's my bias that still makes me believe in AAP, and that even if it comes to power by playing soft Hindutva, it will never pass such laws. I want to be an optimist, but a lot has changed since my first and probably last donation to a political party. And now I'll prefer to donate and support the fourth pillar, mugged up about 4 pillars of democracy in school, but now I fully understand it. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for your fearless reporting. Thank you, Mr. B, for your contribution and keeping news independent and free and ad-free. Appreciate it. I will not share my view on that last statement of Kejriwal. I know it has, it looks terrible. And although I will say it was in response to a very specific question. And yeah, he just kind of took the easiest way out.
What was the question?
The question was that should there be a law against forcible conversions? Now, the options, I think as a politician, you could say, what is a forcible conversion? You can question the very basis of that question. Like, what are you saying? What is a forcible? Is someone putting a gun to your head? Yes, it's criminal. It's not about conversion. Making anyone do anything under, coercion, which is hostile or violent is. So I don't understand the question. Or he could say, yes, there should be law against forcible conversion without, because you can't say no, there should be law against forcible conversion because they put the word forcible in it. No, it's not conversion.
I think what Kejriwal wants to do is...
So he says, yes, there should be, and move on. Basically, the idea is on religion, he's always going to lose. So he doesn't make that...
Those who understand Kejriwal, this guy completely understands Kejriwal. He's not going to come up with this kind of...
But the laws which have been promulgated, they are against illegal conversions. All laws are against illegal conversions. So,
there are laws.
Yes. So illegal. So forceful conversion is same illegal conversions. So the laws which have been enacted in different states are against illegal conversions. They have been prefixed with illegal. They are not against conversions.
I think what he wants to do is just not let it become a media headline. Because if he said nahi hona chahiye, to fir, everyone will be like, oh, is he against? So he just wants to end that conversation and move on. I don't think he'll ever come up with his own bill. Having said that, Karnataka, UP bills or laws are ridiculous.
Yeah.
AK. Hello Hafta team, I've been a subscriber of yours since the last 5 years. I subscribe especially for your commentary on the media and for your podcasts and for your interviews. I wanted to ask the Hafta team, why don't they comment on foreign media more often, especially their commentary on India? For example, I found the following article on FT. There's a link to it. I agree with the basic premise of the article, but some of its content is outrightly wrong. Trigger for the article was installation of Bose's statue at India Gate. First, I don't agree about the author's views on Bose. Also, there's a blatant lie in the article that it says that Mein Kampf is used as a textbook to teach leadership skills in some of Indian business courses. Really? That isn't true. I doubt if that's happening anywhere. At least not in the premier institutes. I don't know, kahin Rajasthan ki kisi chote village mein ho raha hai, so I don't know, but I don't think it's...
But actually this article is behind the paywall in Financial Times, which is one of the most expensive subscriptions, though I do believe we have it in Newslaundry.
Since I'm a math student, this is textbook example of getting the answers right, but some steps being wrong. Like to hear your views on this article and some of other similar articles that you remember. I think a lot of opinion analysis on India in foreign publications is really shoddy and trashy. Unless until it comes from maybe sometimes Indian authors who write, but I'm not a fan.
This is such a widespread problem. It's like really fascinating. So you won't meet a journalist from anywhere outside of like Western Europe or US who wouldn't say that they get us wrong, like the Western media, for example. So if you talk to right now, if you look at the coverage of the Western media about the conflict in Ukraine, every single, it looks, because if you don't know about it much, it might seem, okay, fine, this is what might be happening. If you talk to people from Eastern Europe, they'll tell you all of it is mostly garbage. So I think one reason for that is, apart from obviously the obvious factual inaccuracies, what happens is usually, because I think that applies to all of us, is that we look at the world from a certain perspective, a certain worldview, because we grow up in a certain place, we are educated in a certain way, and then we have that framework. In case of, so these people obviously have a Western view of looking at the world. In case of publications like FT or Economist, they have that added layer of neoliberal free market view. So if you have followed, say, for example, the Economist's coverage of Modi, when he came about, he was hailed as this great economic reformer who will transform India, make it another China or counter to China. And then gradually over time, they kind of gave up on it little by little. And for them, in that in their framework, it makes sense. It's not like the reporters are going out and trying to deceive like intentionally or something.
Yeah,
they're looking at the facts, but within that narrow prism, and it makes sense to them.
Yeah.
Nimish says, I know I'm coming late at this, but I listened to Abhinandan on Seen and Unseen podcast and thoroughly enjoyed it. Made me wonder there's so much we don't know about your personal journey. And I also enjoyed the long format that allowed a relaxed conversation. Wish we could have them at News Laundry. It could even be a limited series, Know Your NL Team, where we can listen to our favorites talking about their journey. I appreciate Hafta format may not accommodate these, so suggesting a separate podcast.
That's a good idea, yeah, Nimish. I think it's a great idea. Maybe we can start this next after election is over.
Next letter is by Aviral Tiwari. Please share the list recommended by Nisha Susan. I too would like to have some women hero icon.
Okay, Aviral, once I get the list from not just Nisha but also Jayashree is going to put some people on that list.
What is this all about? Women heroes.
I've been keeping very quiet, but I saw your email and I will send it.
Yes, I have a wall of heroes. You must have seen it in the background sometimes during Zoom meetings.
But Nisha suggested some female icons.
My niece asked me that there is no woman on your wall of heroes. And I realized.
What a woke niece.
I said he should get a picture of all the women at News Laundry and put it up on his wall.
Yeah, you can put a picture of Jayashree and me and say, they are my heroes.
Yeah.
Only for the rest of the world to call me a weirdo. It's creep, I have a really creepy boss. He has my photograph in his house and I feel so weird with him. I'm like, okay.
So Anonymous, we'll call him Jay, says, annual subscriber who availed the Hafta 360 offer here. Thank you. I request anonymity given. Firstly, a big thanks to all team members, including those we don't hear, see. The production team, website team, administrative staff and housekeeping staff. Good job. Special thanks to Jayashree, Manisha and Raman sir. Abhinandan sir, thanks as always for this platform. I have a suggestion. NL could consider a weekly MOBI format, downloadable for subscribers or mailing list for this format. That way we can read the long form and other text reports on our Kindle devices. A magazine called Foreign Affairs already does this. Actually, reading on Kindle would be so much better.
Actually, Jay, this is an idea that we are actually already working on how we can make this happen. So yes, the Mobi option should also happen this year. So on that note, thank you so much. Before we say goodbye, and have a very special song which is going to be dedicated to all our subscribers on the 10th anniversary for making the impossible possible. But before that, let's have recommendations from everybody. How about we start with you?
I want to start because I want to plug the show again and I want to play an excerpt of it. So morning show, please tune into it and listen to it as a podcast if you don't have the time for a video. Here's an excerpt from a show we did in Goa with Sandesh Prabhudesai, who's an author and he's come out with a book on Goan politics. Listen.
One thing is that the BJP cadres are completely sidelined this time in almost more than 20 constituencies. So it also depends where the BJP cadres will go. If all BJP cadres decide, BJP can survive in Goa only if BJP is defeated this time.
My observation is that they will not get a single seat in Goa because miscalculation. 2 months parachute में आके Goa में you will land and then you will say everybody कि अरे ये हमारे साथ आया, ये हमारे साथ है, ये आएगा, आया नहीं तो धमका देगा. We are going to finish you. This kind of politics Prashant Kishore did in Goa for last 2 months. Wow. And then उन्होंने I have talked to some of his party men who have now उनको छोड़ दिया. और उन्होंने वो पब्लिकली एलिगेशन भी किया है जिनको उनको बोला बड़ा बातें किया गया था उनको पोस्ट देंगे पोस्ट नहीं दिया उनको बोला था आपको टिकट देंगे टिकट नहीं दिया और इम्पोर्टेंटली दे हैव टोल्ड देम वी आर गोइंग टू स्पॉन्सर योर फुल इलेक्शन प्रोपेगेंडा दे हैव आल्सो बैक्ड आउट
एक तो मेरा सवाल है क्योंकि यू आर वेटरन जर्नलिस्ट एंड एडिटिंग हेडिंग अ न्यूज़पेपर के साथ पार्टियों का किस तरह का ऐसा जैसे हम इधर उधर बहुत सारी उड़ती पड़ती खबरें सुनते हैं कि पैसा चलता है बहुत अखबारों को भी साथ मिलाया जाता है पर एक्चुअल सिचुएशन बीइंग एन एडिटर हेडिंग अ न्यूज़ मीडिया ग्रुप एक्चुअल से रियलिटी क्या है थोड़ा सा बता पाएं आई
विल आल्सो लाइक टू ओपन अप
Yeah, I'll plug our election coverage. Already the stories have started coming in apart from our editor's show. The story has come from Manipur also. We have published one story. Basant has done some wonderful stories, wonderful video stories from Western UP. Lot more is going to come from Punjab and Goa. Besides that, this week I think I've just bought 3 books of Dom Morris, the autobiography, so I'll start reading the first and then the second and the third. And yes, I started watching a bit of this Shark Tank on Sony. Sonali.
Okay. Everyone's, it's quite the rage, no?
It is quite a rage. In fact, people like us who don't know business, who always, who has, already booked so many domains for the journalism. Someday I'll start something, but I don't know where to start from. So I think, getting some sense of it, what is it, it's good. I liked it.
Okay, so first let's get Jayashree's.
So I'm recommending a book, which is it's fiction as usual. It's The Last Watch by J.S. Dewes. Set in space, it's about fighting for a team of underdogs saving the world. So it's fantastic. My second recommendation is Vivek Kaul's piece on NewsLaundry, which I really enjoyed editing. It's Why the Budget Speech Makes for a Bad WhatsApp Forward. I think it really also encapsulates how the media tends to view big events. Like you have to sort of break it down into sort of bite-sized, exciting headlines and tickers and things. So
Right. Mehraj?
So I have two recommendations. The first one, I'm afraid this is an academic paper, but it's pretty easy to follow. And it goes to a lot of what we were talking about earlier about the idea of nation and other things. So it's called Partisan Disagreement, the Role of Media, Personal Networks, and Gender Informing Political Preferences. So this is this group of researchers, they looked at how quote unquote misinformation and bigotry and hatred is spread through WhatsApp in India. And they did this mostly among women as well as men, but the focus was on women, and it's a really fascinating study. And the second one is an article. It's an old one, but I came across it very recently, but it's quite a fascinating read. It's by David Brooks in The Atlantic. It's called The Nuclear Family Was a Mistake.
Okay, why? I'm curious.
Exactly. So you'll have to read it.
Okay, fine.
But it's a bit long, but it's worth the time.
Chalo, I shall definitely check this out. My recommendation for the week is a Time magazine article. It's written by Carl Wick. It is How Wordle's creator feels about selling his viral game. I'm sure most of you know what Wordle is by now. I arrived on the party a little late and I played it and I realized it is a slightly easier version of Mastermind, which we all were made to play as children, even though we didn't want to because it was supposedly good for your mind. But it's a more fun version of Mastermind, I guess because it is simpler. But it's a fascinating read because the creator comes across as such a sweet guy, man. And then it was like this wormhole, like you discover him, then you kind of Google other stuff about him. I think it's a great learning for any young entrepreneurs out there, wannabe entrepreneurs, on how some phenomenal stuff is created, not because you were pursuing it for the money, because you just wanted to create something different or new. And I can tell you that is where most success is found, not when you're trying to create something, for flipping. But yeah, he comes across as a really, really interesting guy and really smart. So do read it, especially if you've been playing Wordle. Anand?
Yes, so since we didn't discuss budget, I am picking up a theme from it and recommending something related to it in a different time period. So the budget, many analysts said that it was meant to push development and regional development, to be precise, and regional development and sectoral development. Now, one particular thing, please understand it, because many of us you might be knowing, is that the skewed regional development in India, that the migration from states like Bihar, Odisha, West Bengal is highest. But one important factor that people ignore is freight equalization policy. I think this is a very ignored aspect whenever we talk about these poor states, that from 1952 to 1993, these all mineral-rich states, much like the resource curse in Africa, they are very, very wealthy states. These were Bihar when it was undivided. Jharkhand was not carved out, West Bengal, Odisha. And the central government, now federalism also comes here. Central government imposed a policy, or maybe for betterment or for worse, that all resources that will come from here, all minerals, the central government will subsidize it, and the freight, and subsidized it. This meant that states in southern states, western states, northern states, the industries were set up using the steel, copper, and
another
cement from these estates. And the entrepreneurs, businessmen had no incentive to set up industries there because the access was there. And this was done for even development, but the unintended consequence was that these estates didn't get advantage of their natural resources. And this led to a lot of unemployment and a lot of migration from, despite them being good agricultural zones, but the urbanization didn't take place to the level. So some of the writings I am recommending is by Ashim Sinha and Stuart Edward Coleridge. He's an economist from LSE, and K.N. Prasad. Now you can find these writings and understand the skewed regional development in India.
Right. So thank you, Anand. Thank you, Raman sir. Thank you, Manisha. Thank you, Mehraj. Thank you, Jayashree.
Thank you.
And thank you, Lipi. And thank you, Anil and Tehreem. Appreciate it. And thank you, dear subscribers. This Hafta is free for all of you.
All the News Laundry podcasts are available on Stitcher, iTunes, and any other podcast platform.
Please subscribe to News Laundry. Help us keep news independent. To catch all our podcasts on news, pop culture, current affairs, and sport, visit newslaundry.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
We as a small team at News Laundry have been doing our best to bring you factual ground reports and podcasts and interviews to give you the best information possible at this point. It's more important than ever that you support us and that you help us fight the good fight.